Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I want to start today by offering you a thought to hold on to. What you seek is seeking you. At first glance, that may seem like just a comforting phrase, one of those things we say to give ourselves hope. But if we stop for a moment and really reflect on it, we begin to realize that there's deep wisdom in those words. What you seek is not a distant dream that's outside your grasp. It's not something that you have to chase endlessly, always out of reach. Instead, it's seeking you. It's already looking for you, and it's waiting for the moment you're ready to recognize it. Vulnerability is often viewed as a weakness in our society, something to be avoided at all costs. We're taught to guard our emotions, to put on a mask of strength, and to present only the polished, perfected version of ourselves to the world. But what if vulnerability is actually the key to connection, growth, and even the very things we seek in life? When we choose to be vulnerable, we allow ourselves to be seen in our full humanity without the armor we so often wear. We invite others to connect with us in a way that is authentic and real. In vulnerability, we let go of the fear of judgment and open ourselves up to the possibility of true intimacy. It's in those moments of raw honesty, when we let our guard down, that we often find the deepest connections and the greatest potential for growth. Being vulnerable means admitting that we don't have all the answers, that we are uncertain, and that we are learning as we go. It's in this space of not knowing, of leaning into discomfort, that we create the conditions for creativity, innovation, and courage to emerge. Vulnerability gives us permission to take risks and step into the unknown, knowing that we might fail, but understanding that failure itself is not something to be feared, it's a part of the journey. When we are vulnerable, we also become more compassionate toward ourselves and others. We stop expecting perfection from ourselves, and we give others the grace to be imperfect too. Vulnerability allows us to embrace the messiness of life, and in doing so, we open the door to deeper empathy. We recognize that everyone is on a journey, struggling with their own fears and uncertainties, and that we're all just doing our best to navigate the world in the best way we know how. It is often said that in seeking what we want in life, we have to be willing to get uncomfortable, to face our fears, and to let go of the need to control every outcome. But the truth is, vulnerability is not a passive act. It is a powerful, courageous choice. It is a choice to say, I am enough as I am, and to be open to whatever may come, even if it's not exactly what we had envisioned. In vulnerability, we don't just show others who we are, but we also discover more about ourselves. We uncover the parts of us that are hidden, our hopes, our dreams, our fears, and our deep, sometimes quiet desires. Only when we embrace vulnerability do we begin to understand the truest version of ourselves. And in doing so, we align more closely with what is seeking us. Vulnerability is not about exposing yourself recklessly or putting yourself in harm's way. It's about being honest with yourself and others and giving yourself permission to feel, to experience, and to be human. When we choose vulnerability, we choose to let go of the need to appear perfect and instead allow ourselves to be fully present with life as it is messy, unpredictable, and beautifully imperfect. Self-awareness is the foundation of everything we seek in life. It's the ability to reflect on who we truly are, to understand our desires, our values, and the patterns that shape our behavior. Without this understanding, we are often operating on autopilot, moving through life based on external expectations or ingrained habits that don't necessarily align with what we truly want or need. Self-awareness is the key to breaking free from that cycle and living a life that is intentional and authentic. To be self-aware means to be able to recognize your emotions in the moment without judgment. It's about being present enough with yourself to acknowledge when you're feeling fear, anger, joy, or excitement, and to understand what those emotions are trying to tell you. Often we suppress emotions or try to ignore them because we fear what they might mean or where they might lead. But in doing so, we miss valuable insights. Every emotion is a messenger, And without the self-awareness to truly listen, we miss the opportunity to understand ourselves more deeply. Self-awareness also means being honest with yourself about your strengths and weaknesses. We all have them, no one is immune from imperfection, but it's through recognizing these aspects of ourselves without shame or avoidance that we can grow. Self-awareness doesn't allow us to hide from the truth. Instead, it invites us to look at ourselves with compassion and curiosity. This curiosity is what enables us to learn and evolve, to take ownership of the areas where we need improvement, and to celebrate the aspects of ourselves that are working in our favor. It also helps us to identify the patterns in our lives that we might not otherwise see. Many of us get caught in the same cycles, making similar mistakes over and over again, and wondering why things never seem to change. Without self-awareness, these patterns remain unconscious. But when we develop the ability to reflect, to step outside ourselves for a moment, we begin to notice the underlying beliefs, habits, and assumptions that are driving our actions. We might realize that we've been sabotaging ourselves or that we've been settling for less than we deserve. This recognition is the first step toward breaking free from old patterns and making different choices. In the context of seeking what we want in life, self-awareness is crucial because it helps us to clarify our goals and align them with our true desires. Too often, we chase after things that society tells us we should want, whether that's success, status, or approval from others, without ever asking ourselves whether those things truly align with who we are and what we value. Self-awareness forces us to ask the difficult questions: what do I really want? What would bring me fulfillment? What do I need to feel whole and authentic? Without the ability to answer these questions, we may find ourselves chasing after goals that aren't ours to begin with, and ultimately we end up feeling disconnected and unsatisfied. Moreover, self-awareness allows us to connect with others on a deeper level. When we know ourselves well, we are better equipped to understand and empathize with the people around us. We recognize that everyone has their own struggles, and we stop projecting our insecurities onto others. Self-awareness allows us to be more present in our relationships, to communicate more effectively, and to show up as our true selves, which in turn invites others to do the same. This deep connection with others is essential for building meaningful relationships, both personally and professionally. Self-awareness is also a practice of acceptance. It's about being willing to see yourself clearly without the need to change or fix everything immediately. It's the willingness to be with yourself as you are, not as you think you should be. This self-acceptance is liberating because it allows you to stop striving for an idealized version of yourself and instead embrace the fullness of who you are in the present moment. Finally, self-awareness allows us to trust our intuition. When we know ourselves, we become more attuned to the subtle guidance that comes from within. Our intuition, which often speaks in quiet whispers, can be drowned out by the noise of outside influences. But when we are self-aware, we are more in tune with those inner nudges, and we can make decisions that align with our deeper truths rather than being swayed by external pressures or fears. The journey of self-awareness is ongoing. It's not something you achieve once and then move on from. It's a lifelong practice. As we grow and evolve, our understanding of ourselves deepens. New layers of our identity emerge and our desires shift. What's important, though, is that we continue to show up for ourselves, to take the time to reflect, to question, and to listen. In doing so, we unlock the potential to live more authentically and to move more purposefully toward the things that are truly seeking us. Trusting the process is one of the most difficult yet essential parts of any journey, whether it's toward a personal goal, a career aspiration, or even a deeper sense of self. We live in a world that values results, immediate success, and quick fixes. We're conditioned to believe that if we work hard enough, if we plan thoroughly enough, the outcome should be predictable and certain. But the reality is that life doesn't always follow a linear path. The process is messy, unpredictable, and sometimes painful. And yet it is precisely in this uncertainty that the most profound growth happens. When we talk about trusting the process, we're acknowledging that there are things we cannot control, and that's okay. It's the recognition that we are not in charge of the timeline or the exact way things will unfold. Trusting the process doesn't mean being passive or complacent. It means continuing to take action, continuing to show up, even when the end result is unclear. It's about believing that every step, even the setbacks and detours, is part of the bigger picture, even if we can't see it in the moment. The hardest part of trusting the process is dealing with the uncertainty. We often feel like we need answers immediately. We want to know that the risks we are taking are worth it, that all of our efforts will eventually pay off. But the truth is, uncertainty is where growth happens. It's in the discomfort of not knowing what's next or whether we're on the right path that we develop resilience, patience, and the ability to trust ourselves. Trusting the process requires the courage to continue even when things don't make sense, to move forward even when the finish line feels distant or invisible. This trust doesn't come easily. It takes practice. We've all had moments where things didn't turn out the way we expected, and we questioned everything, the work we put in, the choices we made, the dreams we pursued. In those moments, it can feel as though we're wasting time or worse, failing. But failure is part of the process. It's through failure that we learn, that we refine our approach, and that we build the skills and wisdom necessary to succeed in the long run. If we give up too soon, if we pull away from the process, every time things get hard or uncomfortable, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to learn from those moments. Trusting the process also means letting go of the need for perfection. It's about recognizing that things don't have to be flawless to be valuable. We don't have to have everything figured out or execute every step with absolute precision. In fact, trying to control every aspect of the journey often leads to frustration and burnout. Instead, we can allow ourselves to be messy, to make mistakes, and to adjust as we go. The process isn't about getting it right every time. It's about showing up and doing the best we can, knowing that each step is contributing to our growth, even when we don't see immediate results. There is also an element of surrender in trusting the process. It's about releasing the need for control, for certainty, and for immediate rewards. Surrendering doesn't mean giving up on your dreams. It means recognizing that there is a greater flow at play, one that may have its own timeline, its own sequence of events, and its own wisdom. Sometimes what we think we want isn't actually what we need, and trusting the process means being open to the possibility that the universe or life itself might have something even better in store for us. This willingness to surrender opens us up to opportunities and experiences that we might never have anticipated, but that turn out to be exactly what we were searching for. Part of trusting the process is also about finding joy in the journey, even when things feel difficult or uncertain. We often fixate so much on the end result that we forget to appreciate the small wins along the way. Every day we show up, every step we take, every lesson learned is a victory in its own right. When we trust the process, we shift our focus from the outcome to the experience, and that shift allows us to find meaning and fulfillment in the present moment, rather than waiting for a distant future. Another critical aspect of trusting the process is the ability to embrace patience. In a world where instant gratification is the norm, waiting can feel intolerable. But real transformation takes time. Whether it's building a career, nurturing a relationship, or healing from a setback, the most meaningful changes happen gradually. We can't rush the growth process. When we allow things to unfold in their own time, we create the conditions for deeper, more sustainable progress. As we trust the process, we also begin to trust ourselves more. We realize that we are capable of navigating the ups and downs, the uncertainty and the setbacks. We build a deep trust in our own resilience and our ability to handle whatever comes our way. The process is not just about the external results, but about how we evolve through it, how we develop the strength, wisdom, and perspective to face the next challenge with even more confidence. In the end, trusting the process is about having faith not just in the outcome, but in ourselves, in the journey, and in the unfolding of our lives, even when we can't yet see how it will all turn out. It's a commitment to staying engaged with our own growth, to continuing to move forward, even in the face of doubt, and to believing that the steps we're taking now are building a foundation for something far greater than we can imagine. Breaking down the walls we've built around ourselves is one of the most challenging and transformative acts we can undertake. These walls are not always physical. More often they are emotional, psychological, and sometimes even spiritual barriers that we create over time. We build them as a form of protection, convinced that if we keep others out, we can avoid pain, rejection, and vulnerability. But these walls also keep us from experiencing life fully, from connecting with others on a deeper level, and from embracing the opportunities that are seeking us. The walls we build are often born out of fear of judgment, fear of failure, or fear of not being enough. We've all been hurt at some point, whether by someone else's words or actions, or by our own disappointments and mistakes. In an attempt to protect ourselves from future hurt, we wall off the parts of ourselves that are most vulnerable. We tell ourselves that if we just stay guarded, if we don't let anyone too close, we won't get hurt again. But what we often don't realize is that while these walls may protect us from pain, they also block us from experiencing joy, love, and connection. When we live behind these walls, we limit our capacity to be seen and understood. We hide the parts of ourselves that are messy, imperfect, and real. We may present a curated version of ourselves to the world, the version we think others will accept or approve of, but in doing so, we create a disconnect. The truth is that we all long for authentic connection, but it's hard to connect with others when we're not showing up as our true selves. By keeping our walls intact, we prevent the kind of deep, meaningful relationships that allow us to truly grow and be seen. Breaking down these walls doesn't happen overnight. It's not an easy process, nor is it a one-time event. It's a gradual, often messy journey that requires us to confront the fears and insecurities we've been holding on to. It requires us to examine the beliefs that have shaped our actions and to question the narratives we've been telling ourselves about who we are and what we're capable of. It means asking ourselves tough questions. What are we afraid of? Why do we feel the need to protect ourselves in this way? What would it mean to let go of these defenses and allow ourselves to be vulnerable? In this process, we begin to realize that vulnerability isn't a sign of weakness, but of strength. It takes tremendous courage to take down the walls we've built, to show up fully, without the armor of perfection or control. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we allow ourselves to truly live. We open up to the possibility of connection, of learning, and of growing. We also open ourselves up to the full range of human experiences, the joy, the pain, the ups and downs, and in doing so, we learn to embrace life as it is, in all its complexity. As we begin to break down these walls, we also start to create space for the things that truly matter: love, belonging, and authenticity. We start to realize that we don't have to hide behind a facade to be accepted or valued. We can be imperfect, messy, and still worthy of love and connection. The more we break down these walls, the more we give ourselves permission to be human, to make mistakes, and to grow through them. We realize that it's through our imperfections that we connect with others on the deepest level. When we allow ourselves to be real, we give others permission to do the same. In breaking down the walls, we also learn to accept ourselves more fully. We stop hiding from our flaws, and instead, we embrace them as part of who we are. We acknowledge that we are all works in progress and that growth doesn't require perfection. We stop trying to be someone we're not and start being who we are in all our raw, beautiful, messy humanity. This self-acceptance becomes the foundation for everything else in our lives. allowing us to pursue our goals, build meaningful relationships, and show up authentically in every area of our lives. The process of breaking down the walls can also be incredibly freeing. We begin to feel lighter, as if a weight has been lifted from our shoulders. When we let go of the need to protect ourselves from everything that might hurt us, we make room for joy, creativity, and new possibilities. We stop playing small and start embracing the full potential of who we can become. We realize that the walls we've built, though they may have once served a purpose, are no longer necessary. We are strong enough to face the world without them, to embrace the unknown, and to trust that we are capable of handling whatever comes our way. As we continue to break down the walls, we also begin to see the world differently. We stop seeing it as a place full of threats and dangers, and instead, we start to see it as a place of opportunity and possibility. We start to believe that we are worthy of the things we desire, that we are capable of creating the life we want. We stop seeing ourselves as victims of circumstance and begin to see ourselves as active participants in our own growth and healing. We realize that the world is not as intimidating as we once thought, and that the more we open ourselves up, the more we invite the good things in. But breaking down the walls isn't just about letting others in, it's also about letting ourselves out. Often we trap ourselves behind these walls, not just to protect from others, but to protect from our own potential. We keep ourselves small, playing it safe, because we fear the power we have within us. But when we begin to break down the walls, we release that power, we step into the fullness of who we are, embracing our strength, our dreams, and our potential. The walls we've built to protect us also keep us from our own greatness. And when we let go of them, we set ourselves free. Letting go of perfection is one of the most freeing and transformative things we can do, but it's also one of the hardest. We live in a world that constantly reinforces the idea that success is about flawless execution, that we must present ourselves as polished and perfect to be worthy or valuable. From social media to workplace expectations to the messages we receive in our personal lives, perfection is often held up as the ideal. But the pursuit of perfection, rather than leading to success or fulfillment, often leads to stress, burnout, and a constant feeling of inadequacy. Perfectionism tells us that unless we get everything right, we are not enough. It convinces us that there's always something more to fix, something else to improve. We become paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes or being judged, and in trying to meet an unrealistic standard, we stop taking risks and stop being authentic. Instead of creating something real, we create a facade, a version of ourselves or our work that we think will be accepted by others. But this false version isn't sustainable, and it certainly isn't satisfying. We might receive praise or approval, but it doesn't bring the kind of deep fulfillment that comes from being true to who we are. Letting go of perfection doesn't mean lowering our standards or accepting mediocrity. It means shifting our focus from an unattainable ideal to embracing the beauty of imperfection. It's about recognizing that growth, creativity, and authenticity come from embracing our mistakes and learning from them, not avoiding them. When we let go of perfection, we free ourselves from the belief that everything has to be perfect in order to be worthy. And instead, we allow ourselves to simply be present, to be human, and to be real. Perfectionism also leads to a constant state of dissatisfaction. Even when we achieve something that meets the standard we set for ourselves, it's never enough. We find ourselves looking for the next goal, the next milestone, the next way to improve something, because perfection is always just out of reach. There is no finish line with perfectionism. It's an endless cycle of striving that leaves us feeling unfulfilled, even when we achieve success. Letting go of perfection allows us to break free from this cycle and to celebrate progress, effort, and learning, rather than obsessing over an idealized version of success. When we release perfectionism, we also create space for authenticity. We stop pretending to be someone we're not or to have everything together. Instead, we allow ourselves to be seen as we are, with all of our flaws, quirks, and vulnerabilities. This openness fosters connection with others because it invites them to do the same. We can finally show up fully without fear of judgment, knowing that we are worthy of love and acceptance as we are, not as we think we should be. And in this space of authenticity, we find freedom and a sense of belonging that perfectionism can never provide. Letting go of perfection also allows us to be more compassionate with ourselves. Perfectionism often comes with a harsh inner critic that tells us we're not good enough, that we need to try harder, be better, do more. This critical voice keeps us trapped in a cycle of self-doubt, constantly chasing an ideal that we can never fully reach. When we let go of the need to be perfect, we replace that inner criticism with self-compassion. We begin to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we offer to others. We stop expecting flawless performance from ourselves and instead accept that we are worthy of love, respect, and care, even when we fall short or make mistakes. The process of letting go of perfection is also deeply connected to the process of self-discovery. When we free ourselves from the pressure of perfection, we open ourselves to new possibilities, new ideas, and new experiences. We stop limiting ourselves by rigid standards and start exploring who we really are, what we truly want, and what truly brings us joy. In letting go of perfection, we begin to realize that our value doesn't lie in our achievements or how others perceive us. It lies in who we are as individuals, in the unique qualities we bring to the world, and in our capacity for growth and change. Another powerful aspect of letting go of perfection is that it allows us to take risks. Perfectionism keeps us in a safe, controlled space where we're always playing it safe, always trying to meet expectations, and always avoiding failure. But failure is a part of life. It's through failure that we learn, grow, and become more resilient. Letting go of perfection means giving ourselves permission to fail, to try new things, and to make mistakes without fear of judgment. It's through this willingness to take risks and fail that we discover our true potential and open ourselves to new opportunities for growth and success. Letting go of perfection also encourages us to embrace the beauty of imperfection in others. When we stop holding ourselves to impossible standards, we begin to see the beauty in the flaws and vulnerabilities of others as well. We stop judging people for not measuring up to some ideal and instead appreciate their authenticity, their effort, and their growth. This shift in perspective not only improves our relationships, but also fosters a greater sense of empathy and understanding in the world. We begin to value people for who they truly are, rather than for how closely they align with some unrealistic standard. Finally, letting go of perfection allows us to experience life more fully. We stop worrying about what others think and start living for ourselves. We stop chasing after an impossible ideal and begin to enjoy the journey for what it is: messy, imperfect, and beautiful. Life doesn't need to be perfect to be meaningful. In fact, it's the decision to speak up when we'd rather stay silent, to take risks when we're unsure of the outcome, and to be vulnerable when it feels safer to hide behind a mask. At its core, courage is about embracing discomfort. It's about stepping into situations where we don't have all the answers and where we can't predict what will happen next. This kind of courage challenges the notion that we need to be certain before taking action. It teaches us that it's okay to not have everything figured out, to not know exactly what the next step will be. Courage is not about acting without fear. It's about being willing to move through the fear, trusting that even if we fall, we will be okay. It's in those moments of discomfort that we discover who we really are and what we are capable of. Courage also plays a crucial role in personal growth. It's through courageous acts that we break free from the patterns that keep us stuck, from the comfort zones that no longer serve us. Without courage, we remain in places where we feel safe but unfulfilled, where we avoid risks because of the possibility of failure or rejection. Yet, it's often through failure that we learn the most valuable lessons. Courage allows us to take chances, to make mistakes, and to learn from them. It's through these experiences that we develop resilience, strength, and wisdom. But courage isn't just about facing external challenges, it's also about confronting our inner fears. It takes courage to look at ourselves honestly, to acknowledge the parts of us that are messy, imperfect, or wounded. It's not easy to face the discomfort within, to examine the beliefs, fears, and insecurities that shape our decisions. Yet this kind of internal courage is essential for healing and growth. It's in those vulnerable moments when we are willing to acknowledge our struggles that we begin to change. Courage allows us to move through shame, self-doubt, and guilt so we can emerge stronger, more self-aware, and more compassionate. When we summon courage, we also invite authenticity into our lives. We stop hiding behind the expectations of others or the masks we've created to protect ourselves. Instead, we allow ourselves to be seen for who we truly are. This act of courage enables us to live more honestly, to pursue the things that matter most to us, and to build deeper, more meaningful connections with others. It's easy to hide behind a facade and play it safe, but courage pushes us to show up in our realness, to be true to ourselves even when it feels risky. Courage is also vital in navigating the challenges of life. Life is unpredictable, and we are often faced with situations that test our strength, our resolve, and our ability to adapt. Whether it's dealing with a loss, making a significant life change, or facing a difficult decision, courage helps us to take the next step, even when we don't know what's on the other side. It helps us to keep going when things seem hopeless, to trust that even in the darkest moments, there is potential for growth and transformation. Courage allows us to see these moments as opportunities for learning rather than insurmountable obstacles. In relationships, courage plays an equally important role. It takes courage to be vulnerable with others, to open ourselves up and share our deepest thoughts, fears, and desires. Without this kind of courage, relationships remain surface level, and true connection is never formed. Courage enables us to be present with others in their vulnerability as well, to show empathy and understanding when they show up imperfectly. It's through mutual courage that we create the space for deep, authentic relationships that are grounded in trust and respect. One of the most powerful forms of courage is the courage to act in alignment with our values, even when the world around us tells us otherwise. It's the courage to stand up for what we believe in, to speak out when others are silent, and to make choices that reflect our true self, regardless of the pressure to conform. This kind of courage is often unpopular, uncomfortable, and can lead to conflict. But it's through living in accordance with our values that we experience the deepest sense of fulfillment, knowing that we are living authentically and with integrity. In the pursuit of our dreams, courage is essential. Dreaming big often requires us to step into the unknown, to take risks, and to embrace uncertainty. It's easy to get caught in self-doubt, to listen to the voice that tells us we aren't capable or that our dreams are too far out of reach. But courage enables us to silence that voice, to take action even when the path is unclear, and to trust that we are capable of achieving what we set out to do. Courage gives us the strength to keep going even when we encounter setbacks, and reminds us that each step forward, no matter how small, is a victory in itself. Lastly, courage isn't just about the big, bold acts. It's also about the quiet, everyday moments. It's the courage to take care of ourselves when we're overwhelmed, to ask for help when we need it, and to speak our truth even when it feels uncomfortable. Courage shows up in the small decisions we make each day, in the ways we choose to show up for ourselves and for others. It's these daily acts of courage that accumulate over time and build the foundation for a life lived with authenticity, purpose, and meaning. In closing, I want to remind you that courage, vulnerability, and authenticity are not just lofty ideals. They are the very building blocks of a life that is lived fully and meaningfully. The walls we build, the fears we harbor, and the perfection we chase can only keep us disconnected from the truth of who we are. But when we trust the process, when we let go of the need to be perfect, when we embrace vulnerability, we allow ourselves to become more than we ever imagined possible. It is in our imperfections, our setbacks, and our courage to face them head on that we find our greatest strength. Life is not about reaching an unattainable ideal or living in a constant state of control. It's about showing up, taking risks, and having the courage to be our authentic selves in a world that constantly asks us to be something else. So as you go forward, remember that what you seek is seeking you. Everything you truly desire is waiting for you on the other side of fear, on the other side of perfection, and on the other side of the walls you've built. Embrace the journey, trust the process, and have the courage to step into the life you are meant to live.